For those who don't know, this is Elder Ajabu, your host for Ajabu Speaks. This program is dedicated to stripping the clothes off of well-dressed lies. Therefore, this program is X-rated because the truth will not have on any clothes. You are listening to the most truthful talk show host in the business, unbought, unbossed, and unafraid of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt-naked truth. So if you can't stand the truth, then I would suggest that you go elsewhere, because we're going to talk about the truth here. Today, if I were to give this program a title, or this offering a title, I would probably say, when is someone else's life more important than yours? Are y'all listening to me? I say, when would you be willing to give your life in place of another person's life so that that person's life continues to go on and yours ends? I ask that question because I'm looking at the charges that were leveled against the Broward County School Resource Officer who hid why 17 Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School students were shot to death in 2018. And he has been arrested and charged with multiple counts of neglect of a child by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or by the Florida courts. I'm reading an article from the Washington Examiner that's written by Beckett Adams, put out on June 5th, 2019. And he takes the position, I hope they throw the book at him. Really? He says he would be more inclined to feel pity for Scott Peterson, who's 56, were it not for the fact that Peterson maintains he did nothing wrong. Florida Department of Law Enforcement Commissioner Rick Swearigan claims Peterson did absolutely nothing to stop the Parkland massacres and said there can be no excuse for his complete inaction, and no question that his inaction cost lives. They're saying that Scott Peterson should have went into that school and put his life on the line to save those children. Now that shooter was shooting to kill. And Scott Peterson had to make a decision on whether to put his life on the line and possibly lose it, or wait on other officers to come, wait on backup to come before going in, even if he was going to go in then. Because if you go in, what you're doing is you're putting your life on the line for the students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. When does those students' life become more important than Scott Peterson's life? Are y'all listening to me? This is a critical question in this whole debacle, tragedy, and it is tragic. 17 kids lost their life. But why is their life more important than someone else's life? Why was it more important for someone, a police officer, police resource officer, to go into school and put his life on the line and lose his life in order to save theirs? Who makes that determination that your life is not as valuable as their life, so go in and give your life so that you save their life? I'm telling you, I'm unbossed, and unafraid of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt-naked truth. This is Ajabu Speaks. Ajabu is speaking. Ajabu just spoke and asked the question, when does someone else's life become more important than your life, to where it's that you will go and give your life so that they can have their life? That's a pertinent question. When you're talking about the charges against Scott Peterson, that is what they're saying. Scott, your life is not as important as those children's life. So go in and give your life, at least put it on the line, so their life is spared. Swearingen, the Florida Department of Legal Enforcement, or the Florida Department Law Enforcement Commissioner, Rick Swearingen, said there can be no excuse for Peterson's complete inaction and no question that his inaction cost lives. Well, that may be true, Rick. But the question is, when or why is those students' life more important than Peterson's life? Rick said Peterson, or actually the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, said Peterson refused to investigate the source of gunshots, retreating during the active shooting while victims were being shot. What he's saying is Scott, you should have went in there and determined where the shooting was coming from, who was doing the shooting, and if at all possible, put your life on the line to take the shooter out. Those students' life is more important than your life, and we would advise you to give your your life in order to save their life. Who makes that decision? I know, as a Vietnam veteran put into a war zone, there were a number of soldiers who chose not to engage the Vietnamese soldier because they wanted to protect their life. How is it that the student's life or someone else's life is more valuable to you than your life? They say, or let me not say they, The Florida Department of Legal Enforcement said Peterson refused to investigate the source of gunshots, retreated during the active shooting while victims were being shot, and directed other law enforcement who had arrived on scene to remain 500 feet away from the building. Scott said, my life is important. My life is important to me. My life is valuable to me. Officers, your life is important. If you don't want to lose your life, then you will not go into that school. Because there's a person in that school, and that person in that school is killing people. He ain't playing. If you walk into that school through that door at this time, it's a good chance that this is your last day on earth. When is it a person's obligation to give their life for another person's life? Are y'all listening to me? Broward County School Board member Lori Alhadeff, who lost her daughter, Elisa, said Peterson needs to go to jail. And he needs to serve a lifetime in prison for not going in that day and taking down the threat that led to the death of our loved ones. Now, I can see Lori's point, cause to her daughter Alyssa's life was more important to her than Scott Peterson's life. But why did Scott Peterson have to buy into her position as a mother? That's understandable. And as a mother, if someone is trying to hurt your daughter, then I can understand that you would put your life on the line to save your daughter. That's what a parent would do. That's what a parent should do. But a parent is charged with being the caregiver of that child. Ajabu, you just used a term. I'll get into that. Gina Hoyer, whose son Luke was killed, said tearfully, "We miss our children every day. And there's nothing that's going to bring them back." And she's talking about more than her son. She's talking in the plural. She says we're going to miss our children. She's talking about all of those children that lost their life on that tragic day. Broward County School Board member Lori, she was just concerned about her daughter. From her words, she didn't take into consideration the death of other children. She was just concerned about hers. She says Scott Peterson should have went in and saved hers. She should have went in and saved Alyssa. Lori ain't, from her words, is not concerned about the other children that lost their life, whereas that Gina Hoyer, she is. She said, we miss our children. Not just her son Luke. She said, we miss our children. And there's nothing that's going to bring them back. And we know that. But it hurts so much. And I know that whatever accountability comes our way, it doesn't bring back Luke, and Alyssa. So we've had to deal with that on our own. So she's concerned not only about her son, Luke, she's also concerned about Lori's daughter. Her concern is broader than just her child. But still the question remains, and I can understand a parent wanting someone else's life to be taken or lost in spite of their child's life being taken or lost. But when does another person's life become more important than yours? Yes, a parent, yeah, I can see them taking that position. In fact, if they don't take that position, I question. That's the reason why I raised the question about a mother that would kill a child in his womb. How does a mother kill a child in his womb? Seems like to me that a mother would be willing to put her life on the line to save a child, then talking about because the child is in my womb, I have the right to kill it. I just said something. I'm telling you, I'm unbossed, and unafraid of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt naked truth. You are listening to Ajabu speak, the most truthful talk show host in the business. Max Schachter, whose son Alex was killed, had this to say about Peterson. He was the outlier. He was the coward. I know that every other law enforcement officer from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, from all across the state, cares about doing the right thing. And they prove that today. Now, do you know that, Max? You know that all other Florida law enforcement officers would have went into that building? You know for a fact, Max, that all other or Scott Peterson is the only one that would have taken the position that he took? He may have been an outlier. He may have been a coward. But why, Max, and I can understand your position, but the question needs to be raised, Max. You know, and I have sympathy for the loss of life. No child, no person should experience the tragedy, the experience that those children experienced on that tragic day. Lord knows. We ought to let people live in the womb as well as outside of the womb. Yeah, I said it, and I meant it. But Max, he may have been a coward, but why was your child's life more important than his? Why do you think that he should have gave his life in order to preserve your child's life? And I know that that's an emotional response, but put yourself in that position. In fact, I would question, Max, if you were there and you were in Scott Peterson's position, would you have gone in there? And you have a duty. You're a caregiver. That's your child. You have a duty to protect that child. Would you have gone into the line of fire and put your life on the line to protect your child? And if you wouldn't do it, why would you say that somebody else ought to do it just because of your child? And I can understand the love for your child, and I can understand that you want life for your child. But can you understand why people would want to preserve their life? And if there's a choice between their life and your child's life, that they would choose theirs. I know this is a hard conversation to have, but this conversation must be had. I've even seen in my lifetime where the courts have gotten a case where there were more than one perpetrator of a crime going into a building, going into a house, and the people going into the house to commit a crime. One of them goes off and starts killing people, and the people, the relatives of the people killed, will ask why those that weren't killing, why didn't you stop the killing? Well, you got a killer in the house. This killer is killing people. If you jump in the way to try to stop this killer from killing people, then it's a good chance that you lose your life. Again, the question becomes, when does another person's life become more important than your life, to where it's that you are duty bound to give your life in order to preserve the life of another? Is that just because you're a police officer? I would say not. I would say not. See, they charged Scott Peterson, and they're trying to make the case that he is a caregiver. When you look up the legal definition of a caregiver, broadly in the country, a caregiver is someone typically over age 18 who provides care for another. It may be a person who is responsible for the direct care, protection, and supervision of children in a child care home, or someone who tends to the needs of the elderly or disabled. It is generally one who gives assistance to another person who is no longer able to perform the critical tasks of personal or household care necessary for everyday survival. Well, students in high school don't fit that definition. A school resource officer does not fit that definition. A high school student is able to perform the critical tasks of personal or household care necessary for everyday survival. So Scott Peterson was not a caregiver. Those children were not in need of a person who would help them perform the critical tasks of personal or household care necessary for everyday survival. That's a parent's duty. Or if a person is disabled and a person is charged with taking care of them, then yeah, that is their duty. They're supposed to stop someone from harming that person. They have taken on the duty of putting themselves in harm's way in order for this person who they're taking care of is not harmed. By law, Scott Peterson did nothing wrong. By law, if a citizen sees a crime, they're not a duty bound to stop that crime just because they saw a crime. They are duty bound to if they see it and know it is a crime, to call law enforcement. That's law enforcement's job, to stop crime. But is it law enforcement's job to lose their life in order to preserve a life? That might be a soldier's job. I mean, that is a soldier's job. But is that a law enforcement officer's job? And this is, you're talking about a school resource officer. I know it's difficult. And I'm trying not to be insensitive here. I have great sensitivity to the loss of life, whether it be in the womb or whether it be outside the womb. If it's not for self-defense, then don't take the life. Err on the side of life. And I, as a parent, if you come and you try to harm one of my children, I will put my life on the line for my child. And I will hurt you. I will not only hurt you, I will take your life in order to preserve my child's life. But I can't say that I would do that just for anybody that's walking up and down the street or for another child. I can't say that I would do that. I don't have the love for another child that I have for my child. I don't have the responsibility for another person's child as I do for mine. The point that I'm making is that yeah, all of us love our children. But we can't love our children or think that our love for our children puts a person in a position that they're responsible to give their life in order to save the life of our children. Are y'all listening to me? It's a tough conversation, but it's a conversation that's in the national lexicon, and I don't see anybody talking from the position that I'm talking. They're just emotional, making up law, talking about he's a caregiver. He was not a caregiver. They're just making up law. That's the same thing that they doing up in there in Washington, D.C. That's the same thing that Mueller done when he was investigating Trump. He made up the law. And I'm going to do a show on that. But right now, I'm telling you that you're listening to Elder Umoja Ajabu, unbought, unbossed, and unafraid of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the butt-naked truth. We cannot expect other people to love our loved ones to the degree that they will give their life up so that our loved ones live.